Hello and welcome to your guide to buying and selling at the same time. And our guide today is Grace. Grace, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Hi, Justin.
So before we get into buying and selling seamlessly, Grace, let me ask you this question. If you were in a neighborhood, any neighborhood, could be in Atlanta or it could be in the world, what would be your spirit neighborhood?
Interesting question. So I think I'd have to go with Asheville.
How come?
So not far from Atlanta, so still close to a lot of travel. I like the hub aspect of it. And then Asheville in itself has outdoors, great restaurants, great shopping, super dog friendly, kind of bougie, but kind of outdoorsy, which is what I like. So I would have to go with Asheville.
You have definitely got to have a dog-friendly neighborhood to be your
Yeah,
spirit neighborhood.
wrong with that.
That's for sure. All right, so let's get into how to guide folks from the buying and selling at the same time. That's a little bit different than if you're just buying and coming out of a rental or temporary housing or something like that. When you're buying and selling at the same time, what are some of the things that you need to consider right when you start that process?
Absolutely. So, I think the biggest things to consider are number one, it's like definitely working with a team or somebody that can help handle both. And so having somebody in your corner for every step of the way is super, super important to this as it's much more complex. But as we break it down, whenever we meet with clients that need to do both, there's three options in terms of what makes the most sense for the client. Number one are you looking for financial certainty?
Mm-hmm.
So is what you get out of the house you're selling so important that you need to maybe move twice? Sometimes that's what makes the most sense for our clients. Secondly, sometimes it's aligning the buy and sell to work perfectly at the same time. That's what most clients elect to do, but that there are a lot of moving pieces to that. And so that's something that we definitely can help clients do. And then lastly, sometimes our clients decide to not sell at all. And sometimes holding the property as an investment property is another thing that our clients do. So I think the first thing that just the most important is having a very, very detailed meeting to decide what makes the most sense for you, as there's a lot of different options in this.
Yeah, because with those three main options, the first one you mentioned, it's like, hey, the most important thing is to sell this house. We need to know that it's sold, which can take you down one path. The other one is we really don't want to move twice, no matter what. We need to line things up perfectly. Or option three is, hey, we really need to want to know where we're going.
Yes.
In the sell of the house. If we can, great, or maybe we're going to keep it, but really the most important thing is finding that next house.
Correct. Yes.
Why do you find that people pick one of those three options? What makes someone more likely to pick one of those three?
Yep. So option one, the seller or the buyer and seller typically feels that there's a little too much risk to do everything at the same time. So option one is the least amount of risk for the seller or on the sell. You would have to move twice, but knowing what you get out of your house and seeing that closing, that's when the buyer/seller will pick that option. Option two, I would say, once again, is the most common. And we would just align everything to work. And, there is a little bit of risk to the situation, but a lot of times the client just prefers that option just because, they're able to see both happen, and we're able to work it out. So that situation is a little bit risky, but at the same time, you don't have to move twice, and it end up, typically works out.
So, option two, let's dig into that a little bit, because that is the most complicated and also the most common. Because in option one, you can focus on the sale. Option three, you can focus on the buy. But in option two, when you're doing them together, what do you really need to do to give yourselves the highest chance of success of lining both of those processes up in tandem?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically what we would do on the listing front is have the house ready to roll, so that whenever we found the home that they were going to purchase on the buy, all we would simply have to do is just enter the listing that day. So, that seller would have already met with our visual coordinator. They would already have the photos done, the listing description, everything typed up. So, literally the day that we found the home that they were purchasing, we could put it on the market. The goal is to have the purchase under contract as well and go under contract that same day, but have more due diligence on the buy than you would on the sell, so that it eliminates, the window of, is the buyer on the sell going to back out or not? So you would typically have a 7-day due diligence on your sell and a 10-day due diligence on your buy, and those timelines would be aligned up perfectly.
Grace, that is so smart, and I see so few people doing this. So just to explain to folks one more time, you are, as opposed to like, hey, I'm going to list my house and then hope I find something to buy, you're going to have the house ready to list and then not list it until they actually know the house that they're going to buy, and then align those in a manner that actually allows them to both happen at the same time.
Yes.
Love that. What about contingencies? You hear people talk about contingencies. Can you get a contingency to buy that next house if you haven't sold your first house? How does that work?
Absolutely. So it's definitely, so contingencies are always like, it's definitely worth a shot at asking for them, but it's such a situational thing. Sometimes a seller is open to it, and sometimes they aren't. So definitely it's a case by case basis. We are seeing more contingencies accepted than we probably did a year ago, which is definitely a good thing for these buy and sell contenders. But I would say, if we're going to get a contingency accepted, you're typically not going to get the lowest contract price, because sellers that are accepting contingencies are going to want a premium for that.
Yeah. So you've got that little bit of trade-off. You get more assurance, less risk, but likely you're paying a little bit more for it as well.
Correct. But a lot of times in this situation, what you're paying more for security, and then typically it's rolled up into the life of a loan. So paying a premium for security it's not that big of a difference, especially when it's broken down from a monthly payment perspective.
So if you get those two lined up, you still have a lot of moving parts, even if you get the contracts lined up at the beginning, right? What else has to happen throughout the process to seamlessly get to the closing table and get them both closed?
Absolutely. So the next biggest step, once both of the properties have gotten through the inspection periods, you will need to also be aware of the financing contingency and appraisal contingency, and just make sure that those timelines are in alignment as well. But the biggest thing would be the closing. So the closing, while they definitely can happen the same day. The closing on the sell needs to happen before the closing on the buy, even if it's back to back, just so those funds on the sell can hit and go towards the buy closing funds. A lot of times what we will do is have them close back to back, but we will typically negotiate on the sell side that the seller or the clients have temporary occupancy. It's typically over the weekend, so you can close on a Thursday or Friday, but still have your house that you're selling to move out of over the weekend and into that new home.
Because if you don't do that, what happens? All your stuff is on the moving truck when you go to sign all this paperwork?
Yes, it's a lot more stressful. It can definitely still happen. I mean, I think the biggest thing is that you get the house and you're able to pull this off, but it can get a lot more wild, especially if you have children and that's involved.
Yeah, because if you have no possession, your stuff's on the moving truck, you sell your house, and then you say back to back. When you say back to back closings, you literally mean you sign one thing and then you sign the other, right? I mean, you're just doing it all in one fell swoop.
Yes.
So you have that brief period where you may be debt free and have lots of cash, but then immediately you turn back around and put it into the next.
Probably for about 20 minutes.
Nice. So Grace, this has been super helpful. If you were to say, what is the one thing that it's most important, or if there's one secret to buying and selling at the same time, what would you say that is?
I think it's just working with somebody that can be your trusted advisor throughout the whole process. Just because everybody's situation is so different. So I
Mhm.
really think the secret sauce is just having that initial meeting to really determine what's best for your world, and then crafting the best solution from there.
Yeah, you got to have a good plan in place for this. This is not something to just fly by the seat of your pants with.
You can't just throw a for sale sign up in the yard and see what happens with this. Definitely not. So it's just having that initial meeting.
Awesome. Well, Grace, thanks for being our guide today on buying and selling at the
Absolutely.
same time. We appreciate you. And everyone, thanks for watching. We will see you at the next one. Thanks again, Grace.
Bye. Absolutely.